She smirked while the tow truck dragged my car away, completely unaware she'd just declared war on a police task force. It all started on a quiet suburban morning when an HOA, Karen stood in the street with her arms crossed, watching my blacked-out SUV get hauled away like she'd just won a trophy. She'd slapped a bogus, unauthorized vehicle sticker on it at dawn and personally called the tow company, loud enough for half the neighborhood to hear. Neighbors peeked through blinds, phones already out, because Karen was in full performance mode, boasting about rules, authority, and how she was finally teaching people a lesson. What she didn't know, what no one knew yet, was that the vehicle she'd just ordered towed wasn't just any car. It was assigned to an active police task force. Operation Karen was already bragging in the HOA group chat, while my phone was blowing up with calls from numbers. She really didn't want involved. By the time I stepped outside, the tow truck was gone, and Karen was pacing like a general after victory, telling anyone who'd listen that this is what happens when you don't respect the HOA. I checked my phone. 6 missed calls, all marked restricted. Then a single text came through. "Where is the vehicle?" My stomach dropped, not from fear, but from anticipation. I calmly replied that it had been towed by the HOA. There was a long pause. Then the reply that changed everything: "Do not touch anything. We're on our way." Across the street, Karen laughed and snapped photos of the empty curb, completely unaware that the situation had just escalated far beyond her. Clipboard and fake authority, Karen thought the tow was the end of it until black SUVs started turning into the neighborhood. Less than 15 minutes later, the calm street felt different. Engines hummed, doors slammed, and one by one, unmarked black SUVs rolled in like they owned the place. Men and women stepped out, not in uniforms, not yelling, but moving with the kind of quiet purpose that makes your skin prickle. Neighbors stopped recording and started whispering. Karen's smile slowly cracked as she watched them spread out, scanning the area, asking sharp questions. She tried to march up with her HOA badge raised high, ready to lecture them about community rules, but one look from a tall man with a clipped tone stopped her mid-sentence. For the first time all morning, Karen wasn't in charge, and she could feel it. Karen finally asked the wrong question right as someone flashed a badge she couldn't override. She puffed up her chest and demanded to know who had authorized these outsiders to enter a private HOA community. The tall man didn't raise his voice or argue. He simply reached into his jacket and flipped open a badge so fast it barely caught the sunlight. Karen's mouth opened, then closed. "Federal Task Force," he said calmly, like he was ordering coffee. "Your association just interfered with an active operation." The color drained from her face as murmurs rippled through the crowd. Phones came back out, but now everyone was filming her. She tried to laugh it off, claiming she had every right to tow any suspicious vehicle. The agent tilted his head slightly and replied, "Then you won't mind explaining?" That to our legal team. Karen's confidence shattered the moment. She realized the tow company had already been tracked. Her hands started shaking as she frantically called the towing company, barking orders to bring the vehicle back immediately. What she didn't know was that the task force had already pulled the tow records, GPS logs, and call history in minutes. One agent spoke quietly into an earpiece while another asked Karen for her full name, HOA position, and whether she'd acted alone. The questions weren't loud, but they were surgical. Karen's voice cracked as she insisted she was just enforcing rules, yet every answer dug her deeper. Neighbors exchanged looks. This wasn't HOA drama anymore. This was official. And as one agent calmly said, "Ma'am, this conversation is being documented." Karen finally understood she wasn't the hunter. She was the problem. Hook. Karen was still arguing about HOA rules, while a federal agent quietly said one sentence that froze the entire street. One of the agents stepped closer to Karen and lowered his voice just enough that everyone leaned in to hear. "Do you realize," he said slowly, "that towing this vehicle may have compromised an ongoing criminal investigation?" The word criminal hit harder than a siren. Karen stumbled backward, shaking her head. whispering that she didn't know and was just doing her job. But the agent wasn't done. He gestured toward the neighbors and added, "We now have witnesses, a paper trail, and video." Karen followed his finger and saw at least 10 phones pointed directly at her face. In that moment, she realized this wasn't just about a car anymore. This was about her freedom. Karen tried to save herself by blaming me until the agent revealed what the car was really being used for. With her voice trembling, Karen suddenly pointed straight at me and shouted that I had refused to register the vehicle and forced her hand. The street went dead silent. Every camera swung toward me, waiting for a reaction. I didn't say a word. Instead, the agent did. He turned to Karen and said, "That vehicle was under temporary federal authorization and exempt from HOA jurisdiction." He paused, then added the sentence that knocked the air out of her lungs. It was also carrying equipment tied to a multi-state investigation. Karen's knees buckled. Blaming me hadn't saved her. It had just put her directly in the path of something far bigger than an HOA fine. Karen thought the HOA board would protect her. She didn't know the call was already being recorded. Desperate, Karen dialed the HOA president on speaker, begging for backup and insisting this was standard enforcement. What she didn't realize was that one of the agents had quietly nodded and another pressed a button on a small recorder clipped to his jacket. As the HOA president confidently declared that they had full authority to tow any vehicle, the agent calmly asked him to repeat that statement for clarity. There was a brief, deadly silence on the line. Then the agent said, "Thank you. That admission helps." Karen's face collapsed as she realized she hadn't just dragged herself down. She'd just pulled the entire HOA board into a federal mess. They couldn't vote their way out of. The tow yard manager went pale when federal agents asked one simple question. Within the hour, 2 agents drove straight to the tow yard that had taken my vehicle, while the rest stayed behind to secure the neighborhood. The manager tried to play it cool until an agent asked, "Has anyone accessed the vehicle since it arrived?" His confident nod froze mid-motion when the agent followed up with names, times, and why your cameras were briefly offline. The color drained from the man's face as he stammered through excuses about routine maintenance. Meanwhile, an agent stepped into the yard and spotted something that shouldn't have been touched. Radios crackled, voices sharpened, and one word cut through the noise: tampered. At that moment, Karen's petty power trip officially became a federal problem. Karen realized too late that her little HOA victory had turned into a full-blown federal nightmare. Back in the neighborhood, Karen was pacing frantically as more agents arrived, quietly coordinating. She tried to call the tow yard again, but every call went straight to voicemail. The tall agent who first confronted her stepped forward and said calmly, "Ma'am, you are now part of an official investigation for interfering with the federal operation." Her eyes went wide, hands trembling. Neighbors whispered and pulled out phones, recording every second. Karen's smirk had vanished, replaced by a pale, panicked stare. For the first time, she was completely powerless, and everyone around her could see it. The realization hit like a thunderclap. Her rules enforcement had just put her in potential jail time. Karen's panic led her to make the worst call of her life, one that only tightened the federal noose around her. Shaking, Karen whipped out her phone and called the HOA president, pleading for some kind of cover-up or excuse. "You have to help me," she begged, her voice cracking. "This is just an HOA thing, right?" The agent standing next to her shook his head subtly, letting her continue, recording every word. What she didn't notice was that her desperate call included multiple admissions of wrongdoing, authorizing the tow without proper verification, threatening a resident and ignoring repeated warnings. Each sentence she uttered was another nail in her legal coffin. By the time she hung up, the agent turned to his partner with a grim nod. Karen had just confessed, on tape, to a federal offense, all while thinking she was saving herself. The entire neighborhood got front row seats to Karen's meltdown. and no one could look away. As news of the federal presence spread, neighbors poured onto their lawns, phones ready, whispering and recording every movement. Karen, now pale and frantic, waved her arms wildly, trying to explain herself. But the agents ignored her, moving with silent precision. Children peeked from behind fences, elderly residents gasped, and her HOA peers watched in disbelief. Every accusation she shouted about rules and authority sounded hollow under the weight of professional scrutiny. The once feared HOA enforcer was now the neighborhood spectacle, caught in slow-motion humiliation. Every moment streamed in real time to social media by the very people she had aimed to impress. Karen's empire of imagined power was crumbling, and everyone could see it. Karen tried to lie her way out, but the agent had already anticipated every excuse. Frantically, Karen shouted that she had followed HOA protocol and that the tow had been completely justified. She gestured wildly at the empty curb, hoping to sway the neighbors or the agents. The lead agent, calm as ever, simply raised an eyebrow and said, "Protocol doesn't override federal law, and towing a vehicle linked to an ongoing investigation isn't enforcement, it's interference." Karen froze. Her words caught mid-air. Every attempt to twist the truth fell flat as the agent methodically listed each rule she had broken. Her own call to the HOA president included. The more she argued, the deeper she sank. Her lies were now evidence, and her panic only made it worse. Karen thought hiding behind rules would save her, but her own neighbors were live streaming every second. Within minutes, videos of Karen yelling, gesturing, and trying to regain control flooded neighborhood group chats and social media. Phones captured every word, every shaky gesture, every pale glance as she realized the gravity of the situation. The agent gave no orders to stop the recording. In fact, he subtly nodded at the neighbors, letting the drama unfold in real time. Comments started popping up. Karen lost it. And did she just tow a cop car? And this HOA Karen thinks she's untouchable? The humiliation was instant, viral, and irreversible. Karen's reputation, painstakingly built on fear and rules enforcement, crumbled before her eyes while the neighborhood watched, entertained and horrified as she faced the consequences of her reckless arrogance. The lead agent raised his hand, stopping everyone mid-sentence. The street went dead silent. He slowly turned toward the tow truck driver, studying him for a long second as if measuring how much damage had already been done. Karen noticed the shift immediately. This wasn't about her authority anymore. This was about who made the call. The agent's voice cut through the air, calm but dangerous. "Sir, before we go any further, we need you to explain exactly how this tow was ordered." Karen's confidence cracked in real time. She knew whatever the driver said next would either save her or destroy her on camera. The tow truck driver just dropped a bomb. Karen's perfect plan was about to implode on live camera. The agent turned to the tow truck driver with a calm, piercing look. "Tell us exactly what happened when you received the call from the HOA, he said. The driver swallowed hard, then admitted, "She insisted I tow the SUV immediately, without checking any paperwork or authorization." Phones flashed everywhere as neighbors recorded, capturing every word. Karen's face went pale, her confident stance collapsing into sheer panic. The agent leaned in slightly and said, "Ma'am, you just forced a civilian to interfere with a federal operation. That's serious." Karen's throat tightened. Every rule she thought she enforced, every power she thought she held, was crumbling before the neighborhood, and the entire street was watching. Karen's so-called HOA victory was about to backfire in front of the entire neighborhood. The agents began reviewing Karen's calls, texts, and tow authorizations, each piece of evidence tightening the noose around her. Karen tried to insist she had followed protocol and was simply doing her job, but her words fell flat under the calm, unwavering gaze of the lead agent. Every neighbor on the street was now recording, whispering and sharing updates online. Children peeked nervously from behind fences. Elderly residents shook their heads in disbelief. And the HOA board members began to realize that Karen hadn't just made a mistake. She had dragged the entire community into a potential federal investigation. The moment her confidence crumbled, it became painfully clear. The neighborhood she once controlled now controlled her reputation. And the world was watching. Karen's panic was contagious. The HOA board realized they might be next in line for federal scrutiny. As the agents documented every call, text and action Karen had taken, the HOA board members gathered in a hurried emergency meeting. Their confident nods and bureaucratic bravado had vanished. Whispers of lawsuits, fines, and criminal liability filled the room. Karen, still trembling, tried to reassure them that everything was under control, but no one listened. The agent's calm efficiency contrasted sharply with the board's frantic confusion, highlighting just how badly Karen had miscalculated. Each member realized that her reckless decision to tow the vehicle could now implicate them all. Suddenly, HOA drama had escalated into a full-blown federal investigation, and the board's once safe image was hanging by a thread. Karen thought running away would save her, but every neighbor had a front-row seat. In a last-ditch effort, Karen bolted toward her car, muttering that she needed to leave before this blew up further. But the street was alive with neighbors holding phones, filming, and whispering updates. The agents didn't move, letting her panic play out like a slow-motion spectacle. Karen's attempts to hide or escape only made her look guiltier. Each step she took was captured from multiple angles. Her frantic expressions broadcast to group chats and social media within minutes. What had started as a petty HOA enforcement action had transformed into a public humiliation that couldn't be undone. Karen wasn't just facing the law, she was now a viral cautionary tale, exposed for everyone to see. Karen's frantic escape ended the moment a federal agent calmly blocked her path. Her worst nightmare had arrived. Just as she reached her car, ready to speed off, a tall agent stepped in front of her, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Karen froze, her racing heart pounding in her ears. "Ma'am," he said quietly but firmly, "leaving now would be considered obstruction of justice." She swallowed hard, realizing there was no bluff, no HOA rule that could save her this time. Neighbors were still recording, the cameras capturing every second of her frozen panic. Karen's mind scrambled for excuses. Apologies, anything to regain control. But every syllable she uttered only tightened the federal grip on her actions. The tiny victories she had imagined earlier that morning, the tow, the authority, had evaporated, leaving only fear, exposure, and the undeniable presence of law. Karen tried to negotiate her way out, but every word only dug her deeper into trouble. Kneeling slightly, Karen raised her hands and pleaded, "Please, I was just enforcing HOA rules. I didn't know it was important." The agent didn't flinch, his calm stare cutting through her panic. "Ignorance is not a defense when federal operations are involved," he said, his voice steady and unwavering. Karen's words faltered as she realized that her attempts to justify herself were being recorded, logged, and could be used as evidence against her. Neighbors whispered, some laughing nervously, some shaking their heads as the scene unfolded in real time. What she had thought would be a small HOA drama had now exploded into a full-scale public spectacle, her credibility in shreds, and her reputation irreversibly tarnished. Karen thought deleting messages and calling it a day would save her, but the neighborhood already had a digital record of her meltdown. Within minutes, videos and audio of Karen yelling, panicking, and trying to justify her actions had spread across neighborhood group chats and social media platforms. Phones captured every flinch, every tear, every desperate plea. The HOA board members huddled nervously, realizing that Karen's reckless actions had put them all in a potential legal spotlight. Comments poured in, "She towed a cop car? HOA Karen just destroyed herself. This is insane." Karen's frantic attempts to contain the situation only fueled the viral storm, making her the center of ridicule and horror simultaneously. What had started as a power trip over an SUV had spiraled into a digital nightmare she couldn't escape. Karen's panic hit a new level when the agents revealed just how deep her mistake could go legally. The lead agent stepped closer, voice calm but firm, and said, "Ma'am, interfering with a federal vehicle isn't a simple HOA violation. It's a potential criminal offense." Karen's eyes widened, her trembling hands covering her mouth as the reality sank in. Neighbors whispered and recorded every word, their phones capturing her horror in high definition. The HOA board exchanged terrified glances. The problem had escalated, far beyond petty fines and rule enforcement. Karen's earlier confidence, her smug smirk while towing the SUV, had completely vanished. Every action, every attempt to justify herself, was now being scrutinized by professionals and broadcasted to dozens of witnesses who would never forget the spectacle. Karen tried to apologize, but the agents made it clear there was no easy escape. Tears forming in her eyes, Karen stumbled over her words, whispering, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I just followed HOA rules." The lead agent didn't soften. "Apologies don't undo interference with a federal operation," he said, his tone calm but icy, like a blade sliding across ice. Neighbors recorded every second, phones capturing her trembling hands and panicked expressions. Even the HOA board watched in stunned silence, realizing their colleagues' actions had thrown the entire community into chaos. Karen's desperate plea, intended to save face, only cemented the narrative. She had acted recklessly publicly, and now everyone, including federal authorities, was watching. Karen's reign of HOA terror ended in a meltdown that the entire neighborhood and the internet would never forget. Finally, Karen sank to the curb, exhausted, defeated, and fully exposed. Her HOA authority was gone, replaced by a viral spectacle of panic, embarrassment, and irreversible mistakes. Neighbors whispered and shared clips of her meltdown, while the federal agents calmly secured the scene, ensuring the vehicle and the investigation remained untouched. The HOA board members quietly retreated, realizing they had been dragged into chaos by one reckless individual. Karen's once feared presence in the community had collapsed entirely. What started as a petty tow had escalated into a full-blown legal, social and reputational disaster. As the streets slowly returned to normal, one thing was certain: Karen's power trip would be remembered forever. A cautionary tale of arrogance meeting real authority.